We are live. Hello and welcome everybody to the wide world of Warhammer. With me today, we've got the beautiful people of the southeast side of Australia. We've got Taylor here. Taylor at the bottom. How you doing, buddy?
Not bad. How are you, Sam?
Better now you're here, man. Better now you're here. And the pairing legend himself, Mr. The Man, the Myth, the Legend, Dale Man. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, not too bad.
Doing all right. Just try stay humble and as best as you can as an Eldar player, try and stay humble.
I'm the pairing idiot of ACT.
The only one who's willing and able to do it, or something like that.
Yeah.
So we have these two gentlemen here to recap the ANZ team chance that just occurred this past weekend. I know it seems like ages ago now. I feel like it is, and I wasn't even there. But it was only past weekend. I'm going to go through sort of how New South Wales and ACT's journey was, and then do a little recap of the round, and then also some of the outcomes of the event. But before we deep dive into it all, Taylor, I'm going to hand it over to you. For people who've never heard of you, who are you, and sort of what's your affiliation with Team New South Wales?
Oh, geez. Don't ask me that. Yeah, so I'm Taylor. I've been in the scene for I don't know, 3 years now, maybe 4. Only 2 years, really competitively. But was a part of the team last year, the greater team, but wasn't a part of the playing team, and then went from being a part of the wider team to the captaincy role as of this year. And yeah, basically started with Tau, ended up on GSC and T-Suns as my two main focuses as armies. Bit of a leap, but we get there. But yeah, that's basically who I am, and I got involved with New South Wales basically through, I think it was mainly through Alex and Chadmek, more or less, and then kind of got involved more with down under 40k. I met a lot of those guys. Obviously met Greg, and then Greg and I had the lovely working relationship between us over this past year. Lots of late night calls and League of Legends games, So, but
that's
yeah,
what true bonding happens, because it's a League of Legends game, right? It's not like fighting or anything like that. It's just bonding, team bonding.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Greg and I just knee deep in arena.
Oh, very good, very good. And yeah, obviously knowing yourself for a little while now, Taylor, and obviously you took the role of non-playing captain this year. So I took over the reins from Kirby and led it to great success, which I'm sure we'll touch on. How about yourself, Dale? So for people who have not heard about you, what is your affiliation with ACT?
I don't know. So I've been playing since 5th edition. 5th edition? Yeah, 5th edition. Pretty much always just been an Eldar player with Team ACT. I've just kind of I think it was 2 years ago. It was after you kind of left us high and dry, Sam, that I decided to take up the mantle of doing the pairings, and I spent a couple of days knee deep in spreadsheets creating something that I could work from, and did it a couple of times for the team, and the rest of them were like, yeah, you can handle that from now on. So I've been stuck ever since.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. Well, every team needs a person who is willing and able to do the pairings, and big kudos to yourself and to you both for being willing and able to do such. I'm sure maybe one day you'll love to hand it over to someone else, but for the time being, you're stuck with it.
I think Rowan's keen to do it.
I heard. I mean, he's no longer going to be ACT rep, so I mean, he's got a task to add in, right? Surely. So awesome. So Taylor, so last year, obviously, I had a chat with Kirby about how New South Wales went at ANZTC 2024. Had a nice long discussion, and so I just wanted to hear from your side of the thing. What were some of the things that Team New South Wales wanted to improve on from last year's campaign, where they ended second, right? I think from memory, they ended second.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I think it
was outside of the pods, so it would have been 5th.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it was 5th when we placed. Yeah, I guess in terms of, I still wanted to carry the whole Kirby's message about wanting to take the best humans possible down to ANZTC. I think that's a really strong and important message that we need to carry as well, in terms of sportsmanship. But in terms of what we were trying to improve on this year was obviously our, I guess overall preparedness in terms of building our draft, building our matrix, going down with a draft plan, for each team, and what we'd be looking at, probably more deep diving into that side of things. Practice with having eights practice with Queensland, and then obviously ACT as well has helped us in that kind of refining of skills there. But that was probably our main focus this year, was like more on the preparedness of what happens on the day, and then obviously legitimizing more of what the coaches do as well on the day, because the coaches are the communication between the players and the captain, right? So that was a big thing we focused on this year.
Yeah, awesome. Some extra preparation never goes not useful, so that sounds awesome. What does that look like for yourselves, like getting some extra preparation and building a draft plan? Like, what did that look like on a broad scope?
Many long nights between like myself, my coaches, my vice captain mainly, so myself and Michael House, mainly sitting down and trying to work out what our drafts look like, and also that kind of communication between what the players were looking at playing, and then also building the foundation around certain players. So it's like originally I had a draft plan around, 3 players who I thought were like fundamentally outstanding at the game. At the time, I was getting also coaching from Chris, right, as well, to basically understand how drafting works, and then getting his insight to that too, which was really useful and really knowledgeable. But basically what that looks like is when we sit down, we go through a drafting and a pairing, and it's like we see where factions may end up, and then we try and find ways of manipulating where those factions will end up. And that goes for both sides of the draft. So, let's say like ACT brings something like Ynnari, it's like we'll go, okay, where does Ynnari feasibly end up? And then what do we look like that, like where does our side end up into that? So we're trying to play both sides and try to work out what the best possible draft for each team looks like from that side as well.
Sure. And so ahead of ANZ Team Champs, did you guys go through that whole drafting process against every single team, or against key teams? Did you try and run those repetitions?
We mostly went through, I think it was mainly key teams, but we had almost a plan for everyone anyway. We went through key teams kind of together as a team. So it's like we went through Queensland as a team, we went through Victoria as a team, we went through ACT as a team, and then like basically for the other teams, it's like it was really just like myself, my coaches, and my like overall greater team that we kind of sat in, and we did a bunch of drafts sometimes where it was like for some of the key players in those teams, we were trying to work out where we could find pushes and where we could find like reliable holdings, and that was like more of a group discussion with the players. And then sometimes like the players don't need that external knowledge against other teams, like maybe their focus needs to be on 3 teams for that event.
Yeah, sure. And so just to illustrate to the people at home, what do you mean by key pushes and key holdings? Is that those people getting big wins or holding stable? What's your terminology for that?
Yeah, so like trying to find key pushes. So like trying to find where, I'll use an example of like NSW versus ACT, where it's like we knew House, Michael House, my Orcs player, had prepped a lot into IK. So he was very ready for Cody's IK. Thanks to Jordan and being able to give that kind of more insight into that matchup, which allowed him to find further push in his matrix. I think he had it down as like an 11 or 12, but it's like, he's able to squeeze almost like 5 points more out of it because of like the more reverse engineering that we did throughout those 2 lists. And then on top of that, it's like, for Alex, it's like we were able to reverse engineer Death Guard so we could turn a 4 into a 10. So it's like we're trying to find ways to boost those numbers through those matchups so that both players understand what they look like going into that matchup. So we can play it from both sides.
Yeah, sure. Amazing. Like just trying to find ink out those extra improvements, and there's differential points where you can make the rounds a difference. That makes a lot of sense, and amazing stuff. So that's the plan anyways, but never works out all the way. Yeah. How about yourself, Dale? So since last year's ANZ Teams Champs, I know obviously the ACT team have gone to a lot more team events and stuff like that, but what have been some of the key things that you think the team has been trying to work on and improve?
Mostly the accuracy in our pairings predictions. That was our biggest issue, I think, like last year, is that I'd go into pairings, I'd have a matrix, we'd tested it as much as we could, but we were just finding like way too many of the matchups were being flipped massively one way or the other. So we were really trying to dial in and identify where those bad matchups were, where those like drawish matchups actually were, and like make sure that people understood that like it's okay if things go wrong in a game, but just don't let it go so badly that you like flip a couple of like rating categories down. like going down one because of some like unlucky scenarios and stuff like that, that's fine. It's a game of 40k. It happens. You can't control all of that. So just really trying to get that consistency in our predictions so that whatever I could manage to pull out of the pairings process, we knew that was actually closer to what we were going to get.
Sure. How was that sort of done from an ACT's perspective? Was that something that you generated via the inputs? Like, did you add more details required so you could understand where it may be more volatile versus less volatile, or was it more refinement in games and strategy?
I think definitely more refinement in games and strategy. So we had a pretty tricky team selection this year because we actually had, I think we had a squad of, I want to say 16 players like total, helping with like the whole prep phase. So then like trying to squish that down to the 8 people that we thought were on factions that were useful and that we thought could bring back consistent results against like what their predictions were. It was tough to choose between those people and get that right, but it's just the whole squad has kind of came together and just like put a lot more prep in than previous years, I think, and just like we found those matchups that we were worried about, made sure we played them, made sure people understood how orcs played specifically. I made sure to give people rundowns on like what to expect from the Inari matchups and identify which players and which factions we wanted to use to attack those kind of like armies that you knew everyone was going to bring. Like everyone was going to bring Inari almost, and everyone was going to bring orcs almost.
Yeah, and obviously for people who are listening back home, this is more darker orcs. So obviously, unfortunately, the nerf to more darker missed the rules cutoff and couldn't get a vote across the line to allow it in. But they included more darker orcs, and so obviously very quite powerful and made the list comp for all teams but one, I think, which is New Zealand South. So something that people had to play around for sure. And so you talked about there, Dale, about player selection. So for ACT, obviously I know you're like the ACT rep, but do you know how player selections took place ahead of this year? Because obviously, as you said, there was quite a big squad compared to previous years and quite a number of fresh faces who haven't made ANZTC in the past couple of years.
Yeah, so we had 3 of us doing the team selection together, just kind of like identifying which factions we wanted to bring and stuff like that. We had the teams events that were being hosted in New South Wales. There were some 8-man teams events. I think one at the end of last year and one early this year. They were instrumental to kind of like trying out people that we thought maybe we wanted to bring along and trying out different list ideas and like kind of faction lineups. So our team selection, actually, we finalized it quite late because it was after that last New South Wales 8-man teams event, where we had a few people that we weren't sure of. We knew that we liked their army, but we wanted to see how they perform under kind of like more pressure in an 8-man teams environment where we were like really trying to bring our top squad and see what we could do against some of the better teams like the Horsemen and stuff like that. And yeah, so we learned a lot from that. So
yeah, fair enough. How about yourself, Taylor? Obviously, New South Wales has quite a wide range of players and people who are eligible to join the squad and across a vast state size in terms of geographic location. So how did you determine the players ahead of this year's team and the squad?
So we had probably about 57 applicants, give or take. And then we had to cut it, and then we cut it down to 24. We increased the size from normal 16 to 24 this year to bring on some of the kind of more like players who could just quite make it, but always kind of sit outside the 16 just to give them more exposure. That was one of the key things this year, is trying to like bring them up as well, because it means that, you know, they expose us to new play styles and we expose them to like higher player 40k, which is awesome. But we basically, I kid you not, it was like myself, my team manager, and my vice captain. All 3 of us sat in a room together, and we went through the applications, and we're like, all right, do we bring this person in? Do we bring this person in? And then we did the same thing for the 8, and then when the 8 was being selected, I got the coaches involved, and then we basically had like kind of like many chefs in the kitchen trying to decide what the best team would look like. But then it's like, we're trying to crack down on the process of like selecting the team as well. So it's like with the greater team, we have that council of three selecting the team, which we found really useful. And we had the wider team as well. It brought on so many different perspectives that like one person could never even begin to, fathom by themselves. But it's like that was the selection process this year, and it was awesome to see so many people just getting involved. Even at the training days, we had like, I think it was like 90% attendance from all players. It was insane, considering how late the training days were planned, especially with our busy schedule, obviously. But yeah, like that's kind of what happened this year in terms of the selection of the 8 and also the selection of our greater team, so the 24.
That's one thing we did as well, as we had regular training days that like really helped get a lot more people involved, and pretty much everyone showed up to those. Like everyone was keen.
Yeah, it's amazing, and like obviously I know you guys plan. Obviously, it's per annum. Let's say once per year you have this event, but the time creeps up, and obviously you start planning for these things end of late last year or early start of this year. Then the weeks just go by and like things flow through, so you have to start planning these things in advance. And like, oh crap, the events only a month away. Crap, we gotta get ready. So and look, I know obviously in New South Wales you have a bunch of events that just eat up time and stuff like that. So working around all those as well as it's hard, I'm sure. So. Just to add on a bit there, Taylor, so you talked about having a squad of 24. What did you look for in your players? Was it particular factions, or was it play styles, or ability, or anything notable?
With the 24, we actually made sure that we had we had almost like 2 players per faction. So each player kind of had like a primary faction, then a secondary faction, and they focused on that primary faction. So it meant that whatever we went into, whatever faction we faced, we were 100% prepared for. And that's kind of the vibe we went for this year. I think it worked. Like I think it worked relatively well, but that's mainly what we were looking for. And then we kind of mashed it in with like good sportsmanship, good player skill, and then just kind of looking for that all-round kind of good human being as well, which I think is like I said, the best core value we can carry as a team.
Yeah, sure thing. And so then when you down selected to those 8, did you have sort of roles in mind or factions in mind, or what was that down selection? What did that down selection look like?
That was it was a very complicated process in terms of like what we needed in terms of like what our draft wanted to be, and we had to break it down even further during that draft where we're like, do we feel like we need to have a certain person like doing like certain role and a certain person doing this, and then we kind of decided like I was having a chat with Jordan McGregor one night, and Jordan was like, what if we did Bash Bros? I'm like, all right, let's like try it out in a draft. So it was like CK and IK put together, and then we kind of built the foundation around that. Plus, we built the foundation around like orcs because we knew no matter what we were going to have that in there. And then it's like we started from factions and then built out to roles, and then that kind of accommodated our players into that as well. And we felt like that was really, really good in terms of that process in building a draft.
Yeah, that's interesting. So selecting the factions and then sort of having some roles associated with such, and then making the players fit. Was there something that you found as such, or maybe a bit in hindsight, that you think you agreed to that idea, or do you think you'll change the process?
I think more during training, we'll focus on like where people end up in the draft and giving people more specific directions about where to go with their list building, and even just like some of the matchups they'll face. So getting people to practice more particular things rather than a wider scope. I think that's like the lessons learned from this year. Because as well as we did, like don't get me wrong, second is awesome, but we definitely have a lot to learn and a lot to build upon. And as I said, one of the key lessons for us would definitely be honing in on where people end up earlier and where people basically like will train into for their draft position. That's something we'll hone in on next year for sure.
Yeah, awesome. How about yourself, Dale? Was there some similar considerations in the ACT camp at all in terms of factions and roles?
So we don't have 3,000 people in our community, so we definitely didn't have 2 people per faction kind of coverage. We're definitely more limited in that sense. Like we I think first and foremost our team selection was based off rather than taking into account factions first, we were taking into account the consistency of the player and the skill of the player in general first. We were kind of weighing that up with the factions that they had been repping, and we assigned like factions out and been like, hey, we need you to get reps on this kind of like 6 months beforehand. But as it got closer and as we were sure that there wasn't going to be like another data slate that was going to throw things out of whack again, that's when we started to like kind of combine all of that together. So taking those consistent players, working out what factions they were on, what factions they're really comfortable on that fits with like the meta that we expect, and then kind of like building out a plan for. I was mostly focused on knowing that what options I had available to me to attack into certain key things that we knew we were going to see a lot of. So like the Orcs, like the Eldar, like Chaos Knights and stuff like that. So yeah, the whole 8-man lineup kind of wrote itself, except for like one spot at the end where we were. It was really difficult to decide. And this was the first year where we had, because I mean, previous years we've had our 8 warm bodies that we've been able to bring, like the people that are able to afford to come and that are keen enough. But we had so much more interest this year. So it was the first year that we had to kind of go through and make those tough decisions with people that were ultimately like our mates. So
yeah, it's never easy selecting who's going to be playing for the starting 8. And I'm sure, Taylor, you had the exact same scenario. Like the choices of the last 12, 14, even 16 is like, oh my God, they're all amazing players, very top quality, and they could all make it. Just nature of the beast.
Literally the last 14, we all sat there like, man, any one of these could be there. And it's so hard to pick those people off.
That's when you just have to like fall back onto like what kind of like faction lineup you really want to like attack the expected meta with.
Exactly.
And that's what we ended up doing. So
how close were you to using a spinny wheel, Taylor? Be honest.
We're probably like one more night away from it. I think it got to the point of frustration where we were all like, all right, you know what? Let's just randomize it and see what happens. We almost were so tempted to rock up on the day and just rock up to every pairings being like, let's just spinny wheel it and see what happens. You can come into it with a draft plan and it just doesn't matter. Like, we're just going to spinny wheel it and just hope for the best. Like, seriously.
If you have
you don't know what you're doing.
If you have no idea what you're doing, then they'll have absolutely no idea either. So it's amazing. Great. Foolproof plan. Foolproof plan. Very good. So we go to the events at ANZTC. And so for obviously ACT versus New South Wales, we'll do sort of a walkthrough of the pairings process and how the round unfolded, etc. But prior to that, obviously, you had 2 rounds of 40K on the event. So I know for yourself, Taylor, you had Victoria was the announced pre-pairings ahead of time. So obviously a big stiff competition. And then you had Western Australia thereafter. So 2 big heavy hitters. How are the feelings and vibes following the first 2 rounds?
God, pretty terrifying leading up into Victoria round 1. We had most of the times like getting them on Ritual. That was just... Ritual is such a drawish mission by nature, and we kind of knew that we would end up in a draw somewhere. So we went for a pairings process of like win overall games and then maybe suffer some blowouts. So that was kind of our approach to the draft. So it's like we ended up winning, I think it was like 5 out of 8 games, but then we had 2 games kind of blow out to our predictions, which ended up leaving us on the lower side of the draw, which is fine. We expected a draw on Ritual anyway. And then we went into WA. I think I can speak for the entire team when I say that everyone was pretty hungry after that in terms of like trying to push primary and push like secondaries and differential as high as possible, which was really good. We felt very motivated after Victoria to do very well. So I think taking on Victoria first was very, very good, and going to WA next was awesome. And then I think ACT was a bit of a nail biter for all of us. That was a terrifying round of 40K.
Yeah. Well, don't spoil the ending just yet, Taylor. We'll go through it. So for people who don't know what the ending is, how about yourself, Dale? So obviously, round 1 you paired into a very similar foe in WA for round 1, and then you played the lads from New Zealand North, who are just the same side as you, Dale, or a bit taller, which is even scarier.
I don't know if he was taller. No, they're not taller.
Not to a line. Yeah, but anyway, so WA and New Zealand North. So how do you guys feel heading into round three, like prior, so playing WA round 1, then New Zealand North round 2?
So we were super happy with our round into WA. So from my perspective, we kind of smashed that round, and it was going to be, we were expecting, like, kind of going into the event, I was kind of expecting it to be more drawish because of the ritual. I knew that I kind of wanted to have a plan to use the our factions like Imperial Knights, Orcs, and our CSM, our Creations of Bile, to try to push those differentials in that, because they're the real ones that can actually kind of like push and physically take board space in certain key matchups. And I feel like I got at least two of those three into the pairings that I wanted there. Myself into a Mperor, which is always kind of a shit show. So luckily that panned out for me. And then going into New Zealand North, they were honestly like the way that they kind of compose themselves during pairings and everything, they were so much more serious than Western Australia. And I was like, oh, okay, you guys really want this? Like, you guys are taking us serious. We're a bunch of idiots. What do you mean? And that one was tough, because we were, I think, like 1 or 2 points off getting a win. So we were the high side of a draw. And I'd had us as a predicted win with our pairings. So just like a few little scenarios in like all of our games, honestly, and that could have gone another way, and that would have just been like a totally different story for the event. So we were super happy. We smashed WA. We got like a really convincing top end of a draw against New Zealand North. And then New South Wales is basically a buy round. So
wow, the shade is getting thrown. So on screen now, I'll start sharing sort of a little summary of the pairing. So obviously, New South Wales use a point system to determine pairings, whereas ACT use the green, yellow, orange, and red. So for the colours, which is great for my colourblind ass. When you don't have the names and stuff like that with them, because I can't. Like, oh, it's all looks yellow. For we've added the numbers in there as well as an equivalent sake. So I guess, so Taylor, sounds like, so ahead of the event, you obviously did, everyone from the team, I'm sure, feel like their matrix all ahead of time, and you were able to develop a draft strategy with like 72 to 4 days full notice, rather than maybe 2 hours before the event, or maybe 12 hours before the event.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, very good. So I guess obviously round 3, I assume you had like limited time between pairings, or did you have like a little break essentially?
We had like 15 minutes to kind of like repose ourselves.
Yeah.
So this is where you having so many coaches and like so many people around would have been like way easier, because I had 15 minutes to get all my shit downstairs and then start to work out.
I'm telling you, the coach bet is real. Like,
yeah.
So what did you like? I guess what was sort of the big key? Did you have your coaches help with pairings? I know Gashi helped a little bit with the Excel side of things, but did you have them help also with pairings, or do some scouting or some sorts?
Mostly, so coaches mostly stay out of pairings. I think they're all kind of happy to be like, you do you kind of thing, which was like really great. I think because we're aware of like too many cooks in the kitchen might, cause too many different like leaning ideas. So most of the time, like, it was their job to go and check in on players, making sure, like, giving me consistent updates on like what's happening in the game, consistent prediction updates as well. That was really important. The other big thing is obviously like watching out for just like, if there's any difficulty at the table for any reason, like there's another set of eyes there to make sure that like the game goes smoothly as well. And things like that, like a general like maintenance things. And like the coaches also were like setting up tables prior to like that, to like setting up terrain, objective markers for players, getting them ready to like play their next round. So that was like really awesome. The coaches did an amazing job. Truly like MVPs of the team.
Yeah, shout out to the coaches. I know ACT also had 2 coaches, then obviously Karina as well helped out with Andrew. So shout out to
3 coaches, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing stuff for them. So heading into the round, so I guess I can start with yourself, Dale. What were some of the initial thoughts and feelings? So heading in, did you sort of have a plan or a strategy heading into New South Wales, what you wanted to do, and in terms of any key weaknesses that you saw or how you wanted to attack the pairings?
Yeah, so in a lot of our pairings, my plan was to so our team lineup was heavy on kind of like melee armies that wanted staging ruins, kind of like stage up and launch onto them. We had the Bile, we had the Dark Angels, and we had the Custodes. So my pairing strategy for most people was to put Imperial Knights up first, take a light off, take a light table off. Then I'd consider putting something like Orcs up next, take another light table if it was still available or if we still had picks. Otherwise, leave that later. So once the light tables that we really didn't like, and that's not just like the WTC lights, it's any of the tables where that kind of expansion objective was exposed. Once they were taken off, I didn't really care. Like I had 3 particular lists and players, being our Custodes, Dark Angels, and CSM, that could happily kind of take whatever matchup I gave them to enable me to get the bigger wins for some of our other players. But against New South Wales, the Imperial Knight matrix was not great. It was like 3 oranges, a couple of yellows, and some purple matchups. And we kind of classify the purple matchups as like kind of coin flipping matchups, or there might be like a lot of context behind like what those matchups look like. Like it might be like a yellow most of the time, but it can go really badly in like some certain scenarios, like say against like some kind of like a list like mine. If I verse like Vanguard Nids and they get first deployment and go first, I'm fucked. But otherwise, I can play out like a nice cruisy game. So against New South Wales, I kind of took an approach of I wanted to put things up, some of those armies up, like our Bile, like our Dark Angels, and just take away some bad matchups so that the rest of the team could so I could kind of like improve the matrix going into the later rounds of pairings. Which I don't know if you want me to start getting into it, but like we ended up putting up Creations of Bile as our first defender.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we could definitely get into it. I guess so. Taylor, yourself, what was your general strategy or plan heading into it from the get-go? Like when you looked at your matrix grid here.
So I was a little bit worried about this. This is always going to be a tight draft. We have a lot of reds, which we were very, very worried about. And it's like our reds are very saturated between our factions. So it's like I had to protect a lot, and which meant I had to hold a lot for my kind of like back 4 factions, which meant that unfortunately I had to sack Woody and Ben mainly. Poor Woody. But I knew in this draft that Woody would be overly useful. So I had to bust him into Hewitt at one point, which was really, really tough. I knew that would be a really, really, really tough round for Woody. I'm so sorry, Woody. He had a rough day 1. But like leading with Ben meant that it kind of opened up. I kind of figured that Dale had a lot of staging armies, so I wanted to try and take away staging maps as quickly as I could. And that's kind of why I led with like someone like Ben, where he's got a combination of shooting and staging like combat pieces as well. The other
led
main
with
thing,
Imperial Knights, right?
Did I? God, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Probably
yeah,
IK.
yeah, led with IK.
It's Jordan.
and IK. Yeah.
Oh, I must be thinking of like round 3 or something. Oh, I don't know. I'm so sick.
You're all good.
But like, yeah, I remember I led with like something gunline heavy, and I was like, Jordan, just go on this table and get me like, I don't know, like a 13, and I'll be happy. And then we paired in. I think he paired into you, Dale, and I think he got like an 11, and I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted from you.
Yeah.
But it's like my general theory about going into this kind of like lineup was that it was always going to be a choppy draft no matter what I did. And no matter what I led with, because like if you look at our matrix, if you try and reverse engineer it in terms of by placing like first defender and leading all the way through, it meant that like it was always going to be someone who ends up with a really bad matchup. So at the time, it was like, you know, who's in the right headspace to control that matchup, and that's why I was like, oh, if I bust Woody, it means that like, you know, he's got the control as a player to be like, all right, I'm gonna just laugh my way through this terrible matchup and just maintain that like really good focus. I think Alex was the other one who hit a red, which I was lucky that Alex is naturally a very conservative player, so he's able to push from a 4 to a 10, which is just amazing. A +6 on Matrix is huge. But yeah, that was like my general idea. I don't remember specifically the ins and outs of like what I did in terms of the draft because it was a very like heated blur moment, like most of ANZTC for me. But like in terms of would I change anything from my draft as well? Probably not. I think it was just incredibly risky, and I think Dale had a very good matrix against us, and I think it was always going to be like a really tight round. And also, like ACT have some incredibly strong players as well, which we were very worried about going into it.
Yeah, so when you're talking about there at the end there, so you ACT have some strong players. Do you what are some of your, I guess, comments that you have to your players? Do you base the numbers based upon the player and the faction, or do you assume that the player skill is at an all-time premium and they're not going to make mistakes?
The way I instructed the team to do the Matrix this year was I was like, give me the absolute floor, as in like the worst case scenario of the matchup, and remove all player skill identity from it. Like assume that both players meet at the table at equal level skill, and that the absolute floor of the matchup is what I'm looking at. And then that way, from the floor, we have wiggle room to be like, all right, can someone push here? Can someone hold here? Like, is this going on track? Because like, I think as Dale said before, when it comes to 40K, sometimes there's dice rolls that go either way and then stuff just happens, right? And you lose a couple of points, and that's just the nature of the beast. So it's like we try and mitigate that by being like, all right, let's say if my floor is my 10 and then maybe I get a 12, or worst case scenario, I get my 10 and I walk away from the table feeling happy about that. And that was kind of what we wanted to do. Looking at that. So it's like, as long as we're within almost 2 points of the matrix, that was amazing. Which I think, I'd hope majority of them got. I know Woody definitely didn't. But I think majority of people felt like they were within that 2-point leniency. But I haven't cross-referenced my data yet. I think I've literally just, as soon as I got back from ANZTC, I was like, I'm just taking time off 40K.
More than fair. Until some dickhead named Sam said, "Hey, can you do a show about your whole matrix without even digesting it all?" What a loser! While you're sick and everything.
True.
Okay.
That's fair enough.
I'm actually meant to be at a party right now. I'm meant to be at Chili, Jordan's partner's party, and I'm like, I can't go. I'm so sick. And then Alex is sending the comments being like, Chili says, "Damn, Taylor's looking mad healthy right now," and I'm like, oh no. Getting called out. Like, happy birthday, Chili. I'm sorry I can't be there.
Happy birthday to Chili. It's McGregor's wife, so happy birthday. I hope all is well. So that's all right. You absolute rat dog, Taylor. Absolute rat dog. But anyways,
yeah, I know.
Anyways, I think so. We sort of talked a little bit about sort of what the lead up and stuff was. So obviously you led with Jordan on IK, and then Dale, you said you led with Ashley on CSM. So I guess what were some of your theories behind Dale? I'll start with you. So went into IK with Jordan. Obviously, absolute imitator copycat of Cody Howden's list, the Armiger Warspan stuff.
I've never seen Jordan McGregor come up with an original list idea. Like he just copies Cody every time. Like it's crazy.
Unbelievable. So what were some of your thinkings there with your IK, like as you defended or you attacked them with Tim Neal in Dark Angels and Yanari?
So I put Dark Angels and Eldar into this, knowing that Imperial Knights were going to have table choice. Now, I don't know if you've read some of the Dark Angels data sheets, but they just kind of shit on Knight bodies pretty well. And the damage 3 into like the 2-up armor save, like neg 1 damage, like dudes, just they're able to stage far enough back on like pretty much any table, even if it is a light table, that I expect they're able to get in, tag a bunch of stuff, and kill a lot of things. So we were very confident in that being like a very, very green matchup. And the Yanari matchup into Imperial Knights, Yanari plays this weird game where Eldar love terrain, right? Yanari doesn't really care. So I was happy to play into it and just like try to pull out a draw. My matrix into the rest of their team was a bit shit. the AdMech matchup was miserable. Space Wolves can go fine, but I hadn't actually got prep into it. Chaos Knights is a losing matchup. Imperial Guard's a bit and it was mostly looking like, I think I wanted like the CSM matchup was my only green. There was a coin flip on Eldar, and then the others were all a bit sketchy. So I was happy to throw up Dark Angels and myself, hoping that they would know that the Dark Angels is a terrible matchup, and they take me, which kind of like I was considering if they did just take the Dark Angels matchup though, with like with what I chose to put into our CSM matchup when they attacked with Chaos Knights and whatever else it was. What else did they attack with?
So obviously on the side of New South Wales, you attacked with Chaos Knights and CSM from Kirby and Ben. So
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there any, when you look at this, obviously there's an 8x8 grid, so 64 potential options. Do you sort of just try and look at people trying to avoid the bad matchups there? Taylor, what did you try and do with the pairings there?
I think one of the big things that I consider, I think I remember this draft now. I think I was thinking of Queensland's draft when I lived with Ben first, because I was like, we'll just get him out of the way, or something like that. But yeah, like I think with this matchup, I think I remember, because there was no way we were going to take the Dark Angels. I think Dale was right by presenting Yunari and DA. And I think
I'd also talked a lot of shit with Jordan about how this isn't a losing matchup.
Yeah. No, I think Jordan and I kind of spoke about it, and I was like, we'll take we'll give Jordan like a pretty green matchup, and like he felt like it was a matchup that he could kind of like get like a 11 to like 13, like somewhere between that parameter. And I was like, you know what, if we're able to take Dale out of the pairings, he is one of the stronger players on the team. I don't have to think about him anymore. Get him away from the table. Done. Sorted. That was kind of like my thought process, is that one of my strongest players meets one of ACT's strongest players. And hopefully we're on the winning side of that. And that was kind of the reason why we ended up taking that, outside of obviously it being a bad matchup for DA as well. And we had other matchups in the DA that we felt were more comfortable anyway. So.
Yeah, fair enough. And then for yourself, Dale, obviously when you look at the pairings right now, so for Bile, you have an orange for CK, but then you yellow for CSM. Was there a reason that you ended up actually taking the CK for Kirby?
I was playing around a couple of things here. If they did take the Dark Angels, I didn't want to. So say in the scenario where we took CSM and we did a CSM mirror, which was going to be our yellow matchup. But if they did take the Dark Angels for the Imperial Knights matchup, that was going to leave like our elf matchups looking very grim for the rest of the matrix. So I wanted to kind of like hedge against that. Also noting that we had like a lot of green matchups into that CSM list. So I knew that if I turned down this CSM list now, I could get a more favorable matchup for others later on in the pairings process, and I wouldn't have to worry about the Chaos Knights going into some of our other things. Also, I trusted, due to like putting a player like Ash up first, I trusted that, especially playing, I think we were playing the what's the damn mission called? The one where you blow up objectives. That one.
Scorched Earth.
Scorched Earth. That's the one.
Yeah.
I was pretty confident in that being a yellow matchup. Honestly, like it's really hard to push on that. The most important thing for pushing on that is just taking board presence, and I didn't really expect Chaos Knights to be able to push into CSM effectively.
Yeah, that's very fair enough. And we'll go through the results at the very end there. So, and I know you alluded to it earlier on, Dale, but obviously, so second defender, when you looked at it, you put up Tim Neal as second defender, as like, I guess, when you're trying to staple.
So this was... So I was umming and ahhing between putting up Tim Neal with Dark Angels, because he's another one of our players that I know that I can just put him up and I will get a drawish matchup out of it. And I will take whatever is best for the rest of our team out of the mix, so that we can get more favorable pairings later on. But the other thing that I was considering there, so they New South Wales won, got first pick for terrain, so that meant on the second round of pairings I was going to get the next pick. And this is I was going to put Ewart up on Orcs the entire time, pick up the other light table, get him into like a nice favorable matchup. Usually, if you get table choice with orcs, like it bumps the matchup up a category usually. So I was going to put orcs up, but I just kind of like last minute pivoted to Dark Angels because I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll pick them up later. It's okay.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And so obviously it's a consideration to make is, I'm sure I know yourself, Dale, you've considered more, is making terrain choice a more important element as part of your pairings process rather than just looking at the matrix. Is like, yeah.
There's another thing we focused on a lot this year was like understanding what all the different tables mean for the different matchups. So we put a lot of focus in on that during like our practice, like our practice weekends and stuff like that. We were making a conscious effort to test certain matchups, but also test them under like attacker defender style conditions where one person might get perfect terrain choice. They both look at all of the tables, discuss why they might be good and bad, and then play it out and find out how much it actually changes things.
Yeah, sure. And so was that something you put as part of your data or was it just discussion at the table saying, look, on a light table, I feel much more favored, or a medium table, or super L's, I feel less favored, and then heavy, I feel even more favored than predicted?
So I have a bunch of scripting in our spreadsheet that like copies notes and stuff as like cell comments. So I could like mouse over them and see like notes and matchups and stuff like that. So I can see the matchups where terrain is important. But like a lot of my prep for the event was just getting people to test specific matchups. And I just made sure that I was having conversations with all of the players to get that context behind all of the matchups. And like leading up to the round, I try to have a conversation with them to understand like the dynamic of that matchup so that I could keep that in the back of my head when I'm doing this. Because it's not all just like yellows, greens, and reds and stuff. Like there's so much more context behind it that's really difficult to just display on the sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that even at a further level, I know yourself, Taylor, you tracked as well, who went first and who went second, who got first deployment, etc. They can make considerations for sure. So how about yourself, Taylor? How important did you guys put in much thought about terrain choices and stuff like that as part of the pairings process, or?
Yeah, definitely for our defenders. I know Jordan put a lot of work into it. Brody did, so did Ben. And they were kind of like our three main defenders. And then there were some other rounds where we put up like Yanari as our defender as well. So it's like those are our main four kind of like defenders. And then maybe on occasion we saw Admech as the defender, but most of the time they ended up towards the back of the draft. But those three especially kind of worked out their table choices and felt like they knew where they wanted to go with that. I will say, like in this draft, I remember with Bile as well. Bile, I think, was one of our biggest blind spots throughout this event. I think we learned that really quickly in round 1 against Victoria, where Woody went into Martino from Victoria and it was like a 19-1 to Martino. And we were like, oh, we thought Wolves were really good into it. And then we had to pivot really quickly. We were so wrong about that. But definitely a big oversight and something we had to learn from really quickly. So yeah, with Bile, especially when we threw in CK, Kirby was like, just bust me into it if we don't have any other choices. And I was like, great, let's throw you in. I was really hoping you took CK in that matchup. I was really hoping.
It's quite funny because we had CK as an orange in this.
No,
but
actually,
after this round, we bumped all of them up to like yellows and greens.
Yeah.
Ash was like, nah, this is way better. That was easy.
Yeah. We were like, oh, well, I was like, sorry, Kirby, you're just gonna go in. No, Bile was scary for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's some of these things happen, right? So it's fair enough. It's funny. The changing of the matrices between rounds. I'm glad to hear it's a good news story for yourself, Dale. In a sense, it's going up. So, it's actually way better than I thought. I've been on the other side of Teams events where it just goes down. Like the yellows become oranges, become reds, and then you soon see like one person's matrix is all
the death spiral.
Yeah. Oh, it's brutal. It's brutal.
As soon as someone tells me like 3 or 4 matchups have gone down to an orange, I'm like, guess who's getting put under the bus then?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, your mental health is not going to get any better. I'm very sorry. Yeah. Anyway, so yourself, Taylor, you also put Brody on his guard up there. Was this part of it's a terrain choice or just to follow the pattern of just trying to clear out some of the chaff and make things easier?
No, Brody was always going to be our second defender. I think he was almost second defender in majority of our drafts across the weekend. And he's such a powerhouse in second defender. I think it was mainly table 7 and table 8 is the two tables he was after in particular with his guard. So it's like as long as we were able to find a way to get him on one of those tables, that was really good. I think he had another.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, you go.
I was saying you putting up guard is like the reason I immediately regretted pivoting off my initial thoughts of putting orcs down, because I knew we had next table pick, and I just wanted to take that table off you, and we got punished for that. In this case specifically. Yeah.
I was surprised orcs weren't going to be a second defender actually with this. But in saying that, now that you've kind of explained it, it makes sense. Like it makes sense as to what your thought process was. I think with Brody on his guard in Defender 2, we felt like it was really good. And then I was like, great, I just need to get Brody one of his greens and then he can push, because that's what Brody does. He gets a green matchup and he pushes really hard and he gets a really high score. I'm like, yes, go Brody. But that was kind of like my thought process.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I guess on the flip side yourself for your Taylor, so into Dark Angels, did you just try and blunt that, I guess, from a parent's perspective, or were you trying to protect someone?
No, I think for DA, it's like I think I remember at the time we ended up with DA into was it Greg or was it Ben? I can't even remember.
Into Yanari.
Yeah. So Greg was just kind of like our universal blunter at this point. So whatever we were like, oh, we just don't want to deal with this, we're just going to throw Greg into it. It was also one of those matchups where we kind of sidebarred at the table, and Greg's like, yeah, look, I can probably push into this comfortably. I can give you consistent updates. Like I know the matchup super well. I was like, great, let's just keep having those conversations throughout the round and let's keep that communication up between us. And for him, he felt relatively confident into it, and I was like, great. See how many points you can squeeze out. But in that matchup, I do remember having that conversation with him prior to that. I think I had a conversation as well with Ben, and I think we ultimately decided, or like between myself and Greg, we were like, okay, let's throw you into this. Let's find like a much more active push here, and let's keep Ben kind of on the back foot, because Ben's matrix overall was not super great into ACT. It was a little bit shaky. I think that's why we didn't put him up as first defender. I think that was like our original idea. And then we're like, oh, if he goes up as first defender, he has like 3 very clear reds. So I think that's why we pivoted to Jordan on this one. But yeah, that's kind of where our heads were at that point.
Yeah, that's very fair. And as of yourself, Dale, you took the Yanari just to ease things out. Was that just the game plan and something that Tim is practicing to yourself?
Tim was practicing too. Like I felt like we played the matchup like the day before. I pretty much felt like the matchup was the floor for the Dark Angels, was like a 10-10. It went down a bit due to some crazy dice, like scatter laser jet bikes killing 3 Dark Angels Terminators. Hello.
Average.
Average. But it was a very safe matchup, right? And some of our players weren't as experienced into Eldar, and I knew Tim would be able to hold his ground there. And like the combination of like -1 damage on all of his dudes against Yanari is just miserable. Same with like Armor of Contempt and stuff. Like the Yanari really struggled to actually push in that matchup without just getting blown out. So yeah.
Yeah, that's more than fair enough. And like for people who've never experienced it, or aren't as practice, like getting that off the table is probably more than fair, because I know some people haven't had the privilege or experience of playing Yanari. So even at this sort of echelon of the event, like some people haven't had the chance. So now we're like, because towards the end of the deal, so into the scrum of things. And so for yourself, Dale, you defended with Cody and IK, and then you defended with Ben here, also CSM. Apologies. You defended with House and Orcs. Apologies, Mr. Taylor, and then you defended with Rowan on Noble Demons. There, I guess. Dale, was there a reason behind this at the end?
Honestly, this last lot of like matchups was like everyone was looking pretty good, honestly, at this point.
Sure.
Rowan had like the one orange matchup that I wanted to try and avoid. So I could put him up, avoid it. Otherwise, we had a bunch of greens and yellows for the rest of it. There really wasn't too much thought. I'd put a lot of work into the earlier rounds, in the earlier rounds of pairings to remove the problematic things for later on, so that the bottom side of this would just pan out no matter what. One of the key things I wanted to do with all of that was I was trying to get rid of our matchups that we felt were poor into the AdMech. Because I felt like AdMech were probably going to be left till the end, probably going to be champion, and I didn't want to be in a scenario where we were forced to put up 2 particular people into their last defender, due to the fact that we only had like 1 or 2 people that were capable of matching like Alex on his AdMech as that champion. So
yeah, that's pretty fair. How about yourself, Taylor? Towards the scrum, houses use orcs obviously have a very green matrix generally. Was there a reason behind this?
Yeah, so it's like we knew that this round was going to be very drawish, in terms of we were like, we're playing jump rope with effectively the draw line and the win line, and we're like, we need to find ways to like find very active pushes between players. So it's like in this kind of line, it's like I was opting for my kind of like very heavy pushes to get the very green greens, and then that way they can find ways to flip the match up even further. Where it's like my guys with the more unstable matrices, and even like, to be honest, we wanted Alex in the champion slot because no matter what he took on Scorched Earth, we were like, all right, Alex, play for a 10 and get us a 10. And he's like, yep, cool, done. That's what I'll do. And like that was just like a very easy thing for him to do with his army. So we kind of knew that we knew that would be predicted, but it's like we wanted to make sure that we found stabilization with our reds, which is like we set that expectation very early with our players about this is your role in this game, you need to push, or this is your role in this game, you need to hold. And I think that was kind of where our head was at as a team, where it's like we wanted to make sure everyone was very cohesive about what they wanted to do. And maybe like that's kind of where we were at. I think even in Ben's matchup, it was like, Ben, just like hang on for dear life as best you can.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I know you alluded to before. So obviously, at the flop of it all, it was the Orcs Mirror was an option, but you didn't want to take the risk of that. So you took the IK, and then Nurgle Demon into CSM. So you knew, I guess, potentially could go sideways and badly. And then, just hold on for dear life. And then, as we alluded to before, there was some wolves with the wolves and orcs. So it was going to be a little bit awkward and sketch. So
we wanted that Orcs Mirror so badly.
We did not.
You had no commandos. Like that was like the no commandos easy. That was Ewan's one comment.
Yeah, no. Like I remember House said to me, he's like, any mirrors that come up this weekend? He's like, I don't want them. He's like, you can't pair me into them. I was like, all right, no, like that makes sense.
The one matchup, which is very fair. So at the end of all, like it's pretty tight. So obviously, some of the colors go up or down a little bit, but so New South Wales paired for, looks like quite a win. Like, so a draw, sorry, 83. Oh, actually, sorry. Sorry, missing one. So it looks like a small win for New South Wales paired with 2, according to expected. Oh, so 83 exactly, sorry. So 83, so it's draw. And then ACT is also drawn, for a draw as well. So, but unfortunately, it didn't end up that way. So when the Unari Jordan, the IK fell, it ended up being, it was a 9, so a small loss for yourself, Dale, but a small win for Dale, so small win for Jordan, apologies. And then for Ashley, as well, I guess we alluded to before, so Ashley, that 6 didn't end up being a 6, or an orange matchup would end up being a small win for her, and then a small loss for Kirby. Was there any like sort of lessons learned or anything that came out early on during this, or is just sort of cards fell as they may? Did you know these were earlier on the event results, or no? It's just sort of happened.
I guess for us, like with CK going into that, we knew that Bile was like our blind spot from round 1 because we faced Bile, and we were like, okay, hopefully Kirby was like, throw me into it. I'm not very good into it. Like, he's like, I'll get like a 7 or 8 and I'll just try and hang on and play super defensively and make sure the game goes that way. And I was like, perfect. That's all I want into it. Yeah, Bile was our biggest blind spot for the entire event, for sure. I felt like we were very under-repped on it, and clearly we were. Like, we were wrong about the Matrix in it. Like I said, Woody played into it round 1. We thought it was really good. We thought at the minimum it was a 10-10, and it wasn't. And so we had to learn from that.
Yeah, fair enough. How about yourself, Dave? Was there anything, I guess, early on that you saw? And then I'll put in the scores for the next 2 games. Was there anything from the Unari game into IK? Did you think you had a chance to explode, or you just kept
I mean, I knew that it was going to be like favored to him when he got first turn. It's just kind of the way it is.
Sure.
There was like plenty of movement channels for him to get out. I think that we discussed it, like that score just flips the other way if I went first. I would have been able to move blocking more effectively. I still kept him to a side of the table. Like, that wasn't so much of an issue, but yeah, I mean, something within that like 9 to 11 range either way was like always what that was going to be in my mind, especially on Scorched Earth. Like, there's very little risk of much more happening.
Yeah, no, sure, fair enough. And then as the rest of the scores came in, so as we discussed, so the Wolves went down to the Orcs, and then you had sort of a big swing up here in the Brody Middleton guard game into Tim Zuba, I guess, in terms of Matrix.
This is where I was kicking myself for not putting Orcs up as my second defender and taking that light table off. It was like a table dependent prediction from our Custodes player there, so versing the guard on guard table pick and getting that light table was just kind of like, it was horrible. Like, if you look at the table that they were on, there's no way that a Custodes army can hold that like second objective without like losing big bricks, which guard will take off him.
Yeah, I think when we took that table as well, we were like, oh, the natural is fully exposed. Brody's like, yep, I'll take that. And I'm like, great. Easy, done, sorted.
Yeah, damn. Those things sort of happen for sure. So, and then, but it looks like also the IK games with Cody into Orcs didn't go as swimmingly as planned. I guess on Matrix, but that's just more Dakar Orcs, I imagine, right, Dale?
Yeah, and it sounds like they were like prepared for that matchup a bit more. So had a few more reps specifically into it. We'd played out the matchup a few times, and it had kind of come more Imperial Knight favored. Just because Orcs, if you're standing off an objective, they're so swingy, and it just takes them like 1 turn to fumble, and then Imperial Knights will just stick it to them. So it's kind of whatever there. This was the only round where I didn't put Cody up as first defender. Never again. He's first defender every time. He brings me back wins.
But yeah, just take it from page. The Jordan McGregor, the imitator, obviously followed that plan and precedent, so he just went back to the old roots afterwards. So that's fair enough.
They were just copying us.
Absolutely. So at the end of it, also New South Wales got out with a win by 1 differential point. So very, very tight round. And I guess obviously it sounds like obviously learned a lot from this round. End of day 1, big day, and then obviously headed into day 2 to finish off the event. So I'll head over yourself, Taylor. So how did day 2 go for yourselves? Obviously ending up 2 wins and a draw. How did rounds 4, 5, and 6 go? If you want to quickly summarize, and then we can do a post-event recap afterwards.
Yeah, so like we day 2 was basically like we knew that we would face Queensland in round 5 if we didn't face them in round 4. We luckily had the pairings the night before, which is great. It meant that we were able to prepare for New Zealand South straight away, which was good. We felt very confident into New Zealand South. But yeah, then leading into Queensland, that was where we felt obviously the least confident. They're absolute killers. Like, all of them are incredible at the game, and also you can't even hate them. They're the nicest guys as well. Like, which is awful. But as much as we tried to push against Queensland, they definitely showed like just how far behind we are comparatively to them when it comes to understanding teams. And then I think the team, once again, after suffering a pretty catastrophic loss in the Queensland, went into our round 6 really hungry, into New Zealand North. And I think that's where we pushed the highest differential we had all weekend, which was like 115 win, which was huge. I think the team really pulled together in that last round really, really well. So congratulations to everyone again. That was awesome. But yeah, ACT versus New South Wales, nail biter, and can't wait to do it again next year.
We'll get you eventually.
I believe
I'm sure a day will come for sure. So how about yourself, Dale? For rounds 4, 5, and 6, obviously tough to lose to New South Wales. They're end of day 1, but then
it was tough because we got a 1 or 2 point. We were 1 or 2 points off beating New Zealand North, and then a 1 point loss against New South Wales. So we felt like we were like almost there. And then the first round of day 2 was Victoria, which we got a dead draw on. We were actually pretty much throughout the entire round we were going to win that. But just they were able to like scrap some points at the end, which we weren't able to go. So didn't quite eke out the win there. But like from a pairings perspective, I felt like we'd smash that one, and we were going to get like a really comfortable win. Then we had New Zealand South, where we had a nice and comfortable win into them. And then South Australia, which was actually much closer than I thought it was going to be. It was really difficult to pair into them because by that point of the day, they were completely pissed. So they were just throwing stuff out, which was interesting. But their players then got to the table, and their players were mostly sober. Mostly.
Fair enough. And so you ended up with a draw and 2 wins for rest of day 2. Is that correct, Dale?
Draw and 2 wins, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And so
I think we ended up like there was 4 wins, a draw, and a loss. I think we ended up maybe 2 draws, 3 wins, and a loss.
Yeah, so very and in 4th place at the end, and then yourself, Taylor. I think as we mentioned before, end up on 2nd place, just unfortunately behind Queensland. So, but you with almost a 1 loss and then a draw and 4 wins. Is that correct? Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah.
Nah, very good, very good. So, and then obviously really good performance from both your teams. And I just wanted to touch on there a bit, Taylor. So you said that Queensland, one of the things that you wanted to learn, or that you said they did, was they understood teams better. What does that mean in your mind? Like, what was, I guess, how you're going to try and transfer that to New South Wales for next season?
I mean, like, I don't know if I'll be around in the captaincy role for next season, but we'll see. It depends on life stuff. But like, in all seriousness, whoever does enter the role, it's like I'll pass on my notes, and it's like Queensland, the way they understand pairings and the way that they understand building compositions is just miles ahead of like anyone else, realistically. To the point where it's like, even after the draft, and at least having a chat to the Queensland captain and the Queensland team, it's like they're all super prepared for every matchup I was going to throw at them, which was like scary. And they just have that understanding of they've been doing that for so long, they've been perfecting it for so long, where it's like, we need to spend some time catching up to that kind of level of play. And that only comes with facing them and going to these events like ANZTC, where we get to premiere the best players in the country, and we get to throw them in the box and watch how they all do against each other. But yeah, I hopefully we get to see more of that as well, like from all the other states. And Victoria kind of felt like that as well, like where Victoria had some like massive hard-hitting players. I think every team that we faced had these showstopper aces on their team, where it's like we had to maybe we over predicted or under predicted against certain people, and then we kind of had to learn from that. But the way in our Queensland round, the way they just so perfectly predicted everything in terms of scores through the matchups, just so far advanced compared to where we are.
Yeah, sure. And do you think that just takes time for yourself? So is that just time and preparation, or is there additional info and additional leaps and bounds that New South Wales needs to take to get to that level?
I think we need to spend some time doing some real training as a team. And I think we need to spend more time as a team focused on matrix building and building matchups and effectively, how do I say this lightly? It's like, probably spend less time worrying about I guess like the politics of like the 40K scene, and then more time spent actually doing real work with players and real work with the community as well. I think that's more time better invested than anywhere else, in my mind.
That's more than fair enough. How about yourself, Dale? So, kind of 4th place, the best position ACT have come to date. What are some of the big lessons learned coming out of ANZTC for you guys?
I don't know. I think to add on to seeing what Queensland brought and just how far ahead they are of the other states. So one of the things we want to try to do is just bring some more, I guess, unique list builds that skew in certain unexpected directions. Because I feel like that's a big part of like how Queensland gets a lot of their wins. Is they have these like very specialized, very different lists to everyone else that like is very difficult to predict against when you're just looking at it at face value. And even if you like play some practice games against it, you're not versing the player that's come up with the list. You don't know exactly what their plan is into that matchup. And just seeing if we can start to innovate a bit more within the ACT, which can be difficult with such a small player base. But yeah, just I don't know, more reps, more teams events, and yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think everyone can always say that more reps, more understanding, better practice, and more diversity. But it adds up to it. And obviously, Queensland have perfected that more and more. And the proof is in the pudding, obviously taking first place and 7 from 7 under Eric's leadership. So it's a very impressive achievement. And we'll see if they can replicate it again next year. So before we wrap everything up, we'll hand it over to yourself, Taylor. Is there any final shout outs or plugs that you would like to make ahead of the New South Wales community or the audience?
I would say, shout out to the entire team. Well done this year, all of you. You've all done amazingly. And also, well done to Dale and ACT as well. That was by far a smashing round. We'll remember it as the most cutthroat round outside of getting our heads stomped in by Queensland. But that was an incredible round. So well played. Seriously.
Thanks,
he's sucking up to you. He's lying. He's just like no.
After the interview, I'll be like, "Oh, you suck."
Get into the DMs in the Discord. Get staff to get.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And so for people who may be interested in joining Team New South Wales, what would be the application process ahead of next year?
Yeah, so we'll put out an application. We'll probably post it all over our socials. So that will be over all of our Facebook page. It'll be in our Discord as well. If you're interested in joining our Discord, reach out to our page. We'll send you a link as well. That's where mainly a lot of the buzz happens. But if you don't have Discord, we obviously have our Facebook page as well. So the Team NSW Facebook page is definitely the place to reach out to us on.
Very good. And how about yourself, Dale, on the ACT side of things? Any final shout outs and plugs from yourself? Or the team?
And just the whole team as a whole, especially our coaching group, Aaron, Andrew, and Karina. They were so helpful with actually just giving all of the players the mental capacity in between rounds to actually relax and unwind and just not think about 40K for a moment. I just saw Alex's comment there. Amazing.
Look, would have been 4 from 4 events with Rowan and Nids, but alas, fell through to the Nurgle Demons, caught the play.
Shout out to Rowan finally playing something different. Jesus Christ. Everyone could read us like a book. Everyone knows I'm on Eldar. We didn't need everyone to know that he was on Nids, so we really mixed it up. I was super happy with how we went this year. I think maybe it'll be a bit of a curse in terms of maybe some other teams. New South Wales has taken us seriously because we practice so closely. We go to a lot of events with each other. But I think some of the other states are who are these ACT guys? They're idiots, which we are. But we can somewhat play 40K.
And for people who want to join the ACT team in the future, how they get in contact?
So we have a ACT 40K Discord. I think there's links to it in our ACT 40K Facebook page. If not, hit up either myself or Rowan or anyone else that you see on the team. We're pretty open about just sharing, getting everyone involved. We get the whole community involved with preparing for this, and I think usually November or something like that, we start to put up an application process for everyone to express their interest.
Yeah, and I'll have links for such in the description down below for anyone who is curious. So first I want to say thank you, big shout out to you both for doing this podcast and helping out the team. Pairings is doesn't go, I guess, or I can't think of the correct term, but big thanks to you both for doing it for the teams. It's a big ask and it's a big job to do. I know that Dale, you just have to go play a very easy army Yonari just straight afterwards because that's not mentally taxing at all. I'm not sure there was mistakes made there.
Especially with the way I play it.
Just all finicky as possible. So big shout out to you both for helping out your teams and being stalwarts of the community. So this has been great. Thank you very much. I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone else who has listened as well has learned heaps. And we're going to bid you farewell. So thank you very much, and have a good night. And hope everyone enjoyed. Take care. See you all.
Cool.
See ya.